The DOJ and the Treasury Department are working with the European Commission and 7 other countries to go after one of Putin's biggest supports, and that's the oligarchs. CNN's Drew Griffin reports.
On the shore of the Black Sea, it can only be described as a palace, 190,000 square feet. From the air, you can see the church, tea house, and amphitheater, and reportedly an underground hockey rink, with a no-fly zone and a no-boat zone. This, according to an investigation last year by the jailed Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny's group. They claim that this gilded, luxurious palace fit for a king was built for Vladimir Putin.
This palace is very much a symbol and a miniature of Putin's Russia. He no longer sees himself as a government employee, as an elected figure. He sees himself as a Tsar, as a king of some sort. And a Russian Tsar, of course, deserves a palace.
CNN can't independently verify Putin's connection to the palace, and Putin's spokesman denies the Russian leader owns it or any palace. Maria Pevchik from Navalny's Anti-Corruption Foundation says they have proof that their sources and documents all point to the palace as an example of how the oligarchs corruptly enrich Russia's president.
It has been paid by Russian oligarchs, by Russian state-owned companies. Money from Russian people, from regular people, was stolen and diverted into building this horrendous thing on the Black Sea.
According to the investigation and a whistleblower who came forward, the money for the palace came from a Russian investment fund company that solicited charity donations from the Russian oligarchs.
There are these rumors about Putin being the richest man in the world, and he may be. It's very, very hard to try to understand what his wealth is and where it's held.
Rumored to be worth more than $100 billion officially, Putin claims an 800-square-foot apartment, a few cars, and a modest salary in 2020, valued at about $140,000. But his official income is irrelevant. Russia watchers say Putin controls Russia by determining who gets money and who doesn't, who gets to run business, who skims profit, and how the wealth is passed. He doesn't need any assets listed in his name, says journalist Tom Burgess. It's all his when he asks.
It's closer to something like The Godfather. But ultimately, they owe everything they have to the boss. And with a click of a fingers, as he has shown in the past, Putin can take everything from an oligarch. However rich and however influential they may seem, they are ultimately dependent on him.
Fight the system, interfere in politics, and face his wrath. Exiled Russian oligarch Mikhail Khodorkovsky, who was convicted of tax evasion and fraud, spent 10 years in a Russian prison, he says, for not playing Putin's game. He claims Putin is paranoid, dangerous, and must be stopped.
All the accounts of all the oligarchs who function as Putin's wallet must be stopped. They must all feel the pain right now, and it must continue until the war ends.
Newly imposed sanctions from the West have now made it hard for many of the Russian billionaires to do business outside of Russia. Yachts, bank accounts, frozen. Inside Russia, the economy shows signs of crumbling. But chipping away at Putin's brutal hold on power through economics will take time. And from his actions, observers believe Putin's strategy is far beyond personal riches.
He wants to rebuild Russia as a great power. And you almost have to go back to the Tsarist days to understand that.
Just look at the gates of Putin's purported palace, a golden two-headed crowned eagle, a symbol of Russia, similar to the two-headed crowned eagle that is atop the gates of the Winter Palace that belonged to Russia's last Tsar. Don, the fact is, financially getting to Vladimir Putin may be impossible, and even getting to his oligarchs through these seizures and sanctions is tremendously difficult. They have gone to great lengths to hide their assets behind multiple shell companies safely in Western countries like the United States. One expert telling CNN there is literally no paper trail. Don?
All right, Drew Griffin, thank you very much. I'm going to bring in now CNN's global affairs analyst, Susan Glasser. Susan, hello to you. Wow, stunning. This level of wealth is really staggering here. Has Putin made himself a czar?
You know, that always was the framework, improbably enough, for this former KGB lieutenant colonel who was hanging a portrait of Peter the Great in his office, his modest office as deputy mayor of St. Petersburg in the 1990s. Grew up in the sort of post-war Leningrad with the crumbling palaces of the czars around him, and now you see the grotesque, enormous wealth that Navalny investigation from last year cited in the report. You know, it's really extraordinary the level of detail that they were able to turn up just about this particular over-the-top. Gotcha is a crazy word for something so big and grotesque.
You know, all of these governments are now going after oligarchs' wealth, Susan, and it's really amazing. Do you think that they can keep this up? Do you think that that is going to put pressure on Putin? But I mean, if he is the one who is doled out the riches in the first place, how effective could this strategy be?
Well, look, that's a question, is what is the goal of the sanctions at this point? First of all, there's the question of who, if anyone, is Vladimir Putin listening to anymore, right? And so certainly this is the system that enabled him at the beginning of his tenure. It might have been even more effective to crack down on the oligarchs, but now we're 2 decades in. You see the physical signs of isolation, Putin at the end of those long tables. So if he'd listened to the oligarchs, he probably wouldn't have been in this war in the first place. So that's one question that one has. But the flip side is, you know, causing him potentially to lose support enormously from these wealthy people who are used to operating with impunity in the West and going to their apartments in London and, you know, sending their kids to school in the United States and Europe. You know, that's cut off to them now. And the question is, what kind of backlash does that generate on Putin?
Putin and his oligarchs, Susan, have had decades to hide and to hoard their money. Can sanctions inflict real pain on Putin and his cronies?
Not to the personal level. These are people who, as you've seen, are literally grotesquely rich. You see that in some of these, you know, super yachts that are being impounded by the Italians and the like. I mean, just absolutely levels of thievery and corruption that are grotesque. So it's not going to affect them personally in terms of how they live their lives, except that they can no longer go to Europe. But, you know, Dubai is still open to them. Look at the property that they have there. And you see private jets still going there today, while much of the rest of the world is closed off to those Russian oligarchs' wealth. But I think it's a very important factor in understanding the nature of the government that Putin has put together, and a system in which a small number of people, you know, basically looted the country for their own purposes.
These oligarchs owe everything to Putin. So is it them or the Russian people who will need to decide Putin has gone too far?
Well, again, you look at the nature of the regime that Putin has, and one thing is that over time, he's been more than 2 decades in power. He has become progressively more isolated and surrounded really by the remnants of the security services, the siloviki, as it's called in Russian, that he surrounded himself with. You know, these are not the big business people, although many of them have benefited from corruption and gained large personal wealth as well. And so the question is, this system of one-man authoritarian rule, it's really gone in the other direction. Rather than oligarchs having a say over Vladimir Putin, he seems to have put more and more power onto himself personally. And his speech that he gave yesterday, Don, was just absolutely chilling. I mean, I would recommend anyone to listen to a translation of that. It's almost Stalinist in its promise of a new purge inside of Russia to accompany the horrific military action on Ukraine next door. It's really suggesting of a new level of reversion to 20th century type dictatorship inside of Russia. It's very scary.